somewhat arrogantly came to the conclusion that it's if you start thinking about politics in an intellectual way, you are likely to be on the left. Because that provides a systematic solution, an answer to the questions, puts it all in a system, and also gives you a rather dignified and self-congratulatory place in the system. But once you started thinking, if you think a bit harder and longer about it, you'll move back to what you would have been if you had never thought at all. You know.
Right. I think one of the things that's so tempting for many people, because the world is so troubling to so many people, and so many people suffer in this world, and a lot of what the liberal left tends to rely on is that sense of indignation that a lot of idealistic people feel, because there are things that are deeply wrong with the world. But then when we look historically at how, when these people have gotten into power, whether they're, I mean, people tend to forget that the Nazis were actually, they were quite bohemian in a lot of ways. They had a lot of leftist politics. Certainly their economics was tend to be collectivist, and they were national socialists as opposed to being internationalists. Yeah. But when they get into power, they tend to really tear things down and don't give us a...
Well, I think there's an explanation of this. It's what Hegel calls the labor of the negative.
Right.
That the initial instinct on the left is that negative instinct, that things are wrong, and they must be rectified. They can only be rectified, however, by the seizure of power. And so we're going to seize power in order to rectify them. But once you've got the power, the negative is still there in your heart, because it's driven you all along. You know, that's the thing which has inspired you. So you set about destroying things, punishing people. You find classes who are to blame. You know, the Jews, the bourgeoisie, whoever it might be, and you don't get out of that negative structure. Right. And I feel that's what I felt very strongly in 1968, you know, that, okay, of course there are things that are wrong in France, but there are also things that are beautiful and right, and you've got to go through this and come back and rescue those things, which is much more important than destroying a few obstacles along the way.
Right.